Simon, 3 changes at least, I guess, to the team. What was the thinking behind?
Petty and Melksham are both back available and both pretty important players to us in the front half of the ground. So those guys will come back into the team and we'll work through that last spot post-training today. But they're 2 really important players in the front half of the ground, experienced players that help our forward line function.
What do you make of Brisbane as a challenge, particularly up there?
Oh, look, they're the reigning premier and they're very good for a reason. They're consistent in every phase of the game and they challenge you in every phase of the game, and that's what we expect them to be. They're a great stoppage contest team. They're very dynamic ahead of the ball and they've got some key pillars behind the ball and they win a lot of contests. So when Melbourne play Brisbane, generally the game swings on contest and both teams are really clear. That's the part of the game they'll both go after.
Just further on that, what did you make of their performance against North Melbourne on Sunday?
Oh look, I think it reinforces how tight the competition is and how challenging the competition is. But they're a high quality team. They're a different team. Certainly up at the Gabba, they're a really strong team to play against, and you need to be at your best. And we feel we're building some form within our footy club, but we've got to do it for longer.
Will you use Clayton Oliver as a tagger again?
Look, that's something we'll certainly look at. I'll say this a lot, but there's 2 things with Clayton. One's his health that we're working on, and 2 is getting him back to his best footy. The thing that we love about Clayton right now, he'll do whatever the team needs him to do. We loved what he did last week in terms of his role, and we want to continue to grow his game. But we'll certainly assess that post-training today. We're not committed to him being a long-term tagger. It's about what's best for the team right now. And right now, last week was for Clayton to do that. We'll have a look at what that looks like later today.
Who would be the prime target? There's no shortage of options.
Oh, there's no shortage. Like, you look at Hugh McCluggage and his form's been outstanding. He ranks really highly in the AFL in terms of where his ranking points are and what he does from a offensive perspective. But then you've got Lachie Neale, who's 2-time Brownlow medalist and continues to dominate the competition. And then you've got Will Ashcroft, who in any big game he stands up and delivers. So certainly options there for our team, but we need to make sure that we go after our game as well and make sure we get our midfield playing to a right level.
How important is team defence then when you talk about those names? And while you might use Clary or not, it's also up to all the others to play their role on the defensive side against that midfield. Yeah,
absolutely. As I said, we think we're pretty strong through the middle of the ground, and certainly our clearance work and stoppage work's been to a really high level of recent times. So we'll go after that part of our game. And with that, we need to maximise our opportunities and make sure we hit the scoreboard, and that's what we'll do. We'll certainly value the things in the game that we know drives our team to be highly competitive, but then go after the things that we want to create.
But he might be flying under the radar at the moment, but Christian Petracca, how important is it to have him back fit and firing at the moment?
Yeah, look, he's getting right back to his best, and I think it's probably been underestimated his last month of footy. I think he's been outstanding in the way he's gone about it. And I think we're starting to see the best of Christian Petracca again, and it's just great to see him really get that football side of his game right back to an elite level. And he's worked incredibly hard, which we all know, and he's highly invested in what he's doing. And I think, from a competition perspective, you just look at the competition around what you love to see in the game. I think everyone would agree seeing Christian Petracca at his best, something they all enjoy.
Harvey Langford's making a strong case for Rising Star of the Year. It's still very early in the season, but he looks a star.
Yeah, he is. And he had some hard lessons early in the season. There's some things in his game that we wanted him to work on, and he went back to the VFL on the defensive side of the game. Since he's come back in, he's been outstanding. He's clearly got an appetite to win the ball through the middle of the ground, but being able to put him on the wing with his aerial capacity, he's certainly changing some of the way we want to play. So he's a huge asset for us moving forward.
Goody, what have you made of the talk about Luke Jackson wanting or potentially wanting to come back to Melbourne?
Yeah, look, we love Jacko. Clearly he's a premiership player, and if it ever came to a point that he wanted to come back to Melbourne, there's no question that we'd be interested. But right now he's a contracted player to Fremantle, so we can't deal in hypotheticals. All we can deal with the facts, and he's contracted. I think his manager and Luke have clearly stated that that's the case. As I said, if he ever got to the point where he wanted to come back to Melbourne, we'd certainly be interested.
Have you spoken to him?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't spoken to him at all. We speak about footy from time to time, but I haven't spoken to him about that, no.
What about the idea that you might have to give up Pickett to get Jackson?
I'll keep saying it, Cozzie's not going anywhere. Cozzie's got 2.5 years left at the Melbourne Footy Club, and our plan is to make Cozzie a D for life. And we're certainly not going to deal in those type of hypotheticals because we love Cozzie. He's a Melbourne person and he's going to be here for a long time.
How's Jack going?
Yeah, look, he's working his way through the protocols. He'll come out of those mid next week and he'll be right to go next week.
Jacob Van Rooyen, just one on him, left out of the side this week again. What's been the messaging to him?
Yeah, look, obviously we don't want to bring young players generally, philosophy of not bringing them in and out of the team. And we had a pretty strong plan with Jacob and we had some things that we wanted to work on in his game to get him right back to his best. Obviously with Petty and Melksham being out of the team last week, we were sort of forced in a way to bring him back into the AFL. And there were some things in his game that were heading in the right direction, but we want to see a little bit more. And he's working incredibly hard. He's a big part of our future. And there's no question that he'll be back in the AFL time in the not too distant future.
Jack Lever just needs the 1 week in the VFL.
Yeah, look, he's sort of been on some modified load this week. Part of his reintegration back towards AFL. Obviously, he's missed a lot of footy. We'll assess that next week. He may need one more, but we'll just wait and see how that plays out.
Want more content? Click on the videos below and keep the momentum going. I'll catch you in the next one.